Pine Valley Lake was filled with the sound of screaming metal as steel struck the undercarriage of a spotless Cadillac Escalade in white. I saw our HOA president, Patricia Henderson, furiously waving her arms and shouting into her phone through the window of my cabin. She was phoning 911 to report that someone was using a trap of some sort to ruin her car. She was unaware that she was the one who started the whole thing. By parking illegally on my property for the 20th time this month. Allow me to back up and describe how we arrived at this point. I received my grandfather's lakefront cabin in Pine Valley Estates 3 months ago. It was a simple A-frame building with a private pier that extended into the crystal clearer water, surrounded by tall woods. Our family had owned the cabin since 1962, long before the neighborhood was developed into a gated community with a homeowners association. Since my property was still one of the few that existed before the HOA, I was not legally subject to its regulations. This information would become crucial. For 6 years, Patricia Henderson served as the Pine Valley Estates HOA's president. She dominated the neighborhood with an iron fist encased in passive-aggressive grins, was in her mid-50s, and was always immaculately dressed in designer pantsuits. She arrived at my house with a clipboard and a phony friendly smile on the first occasion we met in a patronizing manner. She told me that all homes in Pine Valley Estates had to pay $300 a month in HOA dues, adhere to architectural standards, and submit to routine inspections. Her smile disappeared when I gave her the actual deed, which proved I wasn't under the HOA's jurisdiction, and gently explained that my property predates them. Everyone in Pine Valley contributed to the community standards, she remarked in a hurried voice. I informed her that while I would politely maintain my property, I would not be joining the HOA. I became her special project right away. The abuse began modestly. Patricia would give me violation notices for stuff like keeping my boat at my private dock without permission from the HOA, or having the wrong color mailbox that didn't pertain to me. I choose to disregard them. She then went too far by having the landscaping team she had hired dispose of garden garbage near my private access road's entrance. She falsely claimed innocence when I complained, saying they must have erred when Patricia found out that my private access road crossed a tiny portion of HOA common property. The real issues started. I was technically allowed to utilize that 20-foot stretch of road since I had a 1962 legal easement. Patricia, however, determined that this provided her power. She began parking her enormous SUV directly where my easement started, obstructing my path to the cabin. I knocked on her door the first time it happened and gently asked her to relocate her car with a cheesy smile. She said that parking on HOA land was within her rights. She recommended that I bring up my legal easement with the HOA board at their weekly meeting. She had an iron hold on that board, of course. Weeks passed while this game went on. Her Escalade would always be parked in a way that would prevent me from entering the cabin on Fridays. When I arrived for the weekend, I would have to carry my provisions a quarter mile into the woods after parking on the main road. As more neighbors became aware of what was going on, a few of them discreetly expressed their regret to me, but they were too scared of Patricia's reprisals to speak up. I made the decision to act at that point. I engaged David Sullivan, a property lawyer with expertise in easement law. After looking over my paperwork, he validated my pre-existing knowledge. I was legally permitted to use that portion of the road, and anyone who blocked it was infringing on someone else's property rights and trespassing. A formal cease and desist letter was addressed to Patricia. She doubled down in response. She no longer merely parked there on the weekends. She only moved her SUV when she had to drive somewhere, making it a permanent fixture. She even put in a security camera pointed at my easement, saying she had to keep an eye out for illegal cars on HOA property. I came up with a solution after speaking with my lawyer and the local government. The precise location where my legal easement started is where I would erect a retractable Bollard system. Vehicles could pass freely once it was lowered. It would form a physical barrier when lifted. The best part was that it would be completely on my land, only a few inches from the easement's beginning. I obtained from the county all the required permissions. The installation was fully compliant with the law. The heavy-duty commercial-grade Bollard system I selected was made for high-security establishments. It could be controlled by a remote control and would raise 3,000 pounds gradually. yet forcefully. On a Thursday, Patricia was working as a regional manager for a pharmaceutical business when the installation crew finished the job. The steel cylinder was painted bright yellow with fluorescent stripes and positioned flush with the ground. Also put up several warning signs that said that only authorized cars were allowed on private land, and that an autonomous barrier system was in operation. When I got to the cottage that Friday afternoon, Patricia's Escalade was parked in the spot where it usually is, right above my recently installed Bollard. She had purposefully placed it so that the Bollard was beneath the middle of her car. As she observed me from her home, I could see her curtains flutter. She was presumably waiting for me to knock on her door and implore her to relocate. Rather, I quietly exited my truck and took out my phone to begin recording. I took care to record unobstructed footage of her car obstructing my legal easement, the warning sign she disregarded, and the fact that she was partially on my land. I then took the Bollard remote control out. The system began to hum as I hit the activation button. The Bollard started its gradual climb, which was intended to provide any driver, if they were inside, enough time to maneuver their car. However, Patricia wasn't in her vehicle. With constant mechanical effort, the steel cylinder pressed up against the Escalade's undercarriage. At that moment, Patricia stormed out of her home, her face flushed with anger. She let me know that I was damaging her car by screaming at the top of her lungs as she hurried towards her SUV, which was now tilting at a dangerous angle as the Bollard lifted it from underneath. I quietly kept filming. The frame of the car started to flex, and the sound of groaning metal filled the air. She pulled on the handle of her door, but the angle prevented it from opening. Then, yelling frantically that I was setting up a trap to attack her automobile, she took out her phone and dialed 911. She said that while I was standing next to the numerous warning signs she had decided to disregard, I had committed vandalism, damaged private property, and created a dangerous hazard. 2 sheriff's deputies showed up in 10 minutes. Patricia hurried over to them right away, pointing at me and demanding that I be taken into custody for damaging her car. She gave a powerful performance, even managing to cry a little as she explained how I had deliberately targeted her defenseless parked car. A tall man with graying temples, Deputy Morrison, listened to her narrative with patience. He then turned to face me and inquired about my account of what had happened. I showed him the folder of paperwork I had been carrying and gave him my phone with the video I had just taken. It included my land deed, the 1962 legal easement, my attorney's cease and desist letter, the licenses for the Bollard installation, and pictures showing the weeks Patricia barred me from entering. Deputy Morrison's demeanor changed from neutral to sterner as he went over the materials. He gave the paperwork to Deputy Chen, his partner, who gave them a thorough inspection as well. After then, they both turned to face the site. Warning. Signs were prominently displayed. Patricia's Escalade was hanging at an odd angle, and the Bollard was plainly on my property. Patricia seemed to be the one breaching the law, Deputy Morrison replied firmly as he turned to face her. Despite several warnings, she was trespassing on private property, parking unlawfully, and obstructing an illegal easement as Patricia swore that she was the HOA president and had control over common spaces. Her face turned from purple to white. The deputy clarified that property law and legal easements were not superseded by HOA power. He then told her that she would be getting penalties for criminal trespass and obstruction of a private easement. Furthermore, since she had unlawfully parked on private property in spite of posted warnings, she was responsible for any damage to her car. Patricia's breakdown was amazing. She yelled at me, the sheriff's office, and the Bollard manufacturer, that she would sue them all. She insisted on speaking with the supervisor of the deputies. She made threats to have me kicked out of Pine Valley Estates. Unfazed, the deputies composed her citations in a professional manner. The arrival of the tow truck was the finest part. After assessing the situation, the driver told Patricia that a difficult extraction involving specialized equipment would be necessary. Given that the car was parked illegally at the time of the accident, her insurance probably wouldn't pay the minimum $1,200 amount. Every bird in a mile was likely scared away by her yell of indignation. A number of neighbors had come to observe the scene as the deputies got ready to go. Many of them served on the HOA board and had long condoned Patricia's actions. They witnessed their fearless leader turned into a screaming wreck, her opulent SUV ruined by her own unyielding disobedience to the law. The immediate results were prompt and satisfactory. Patricia was required to pay $800 in fines for the tickets, $1,600 for the specialized towing, and more than $6,000 for repairs to her Escalade. However, the actual repercussions were revealed at the emergency HOA board meeting 2 weeks later. Like wildfire, word of the incident had spread across Pine Valley Estates. After years of suffering under Patricia's despotic control, the neighbors finally found their bravery. During the public comment session, they took the stage one by one and related their own accounts of harassment and power abuse. The only option available to the board was to request a vote of no confidence. There was a unanimous vote. Patricia Henderson was promptly dismissed from her position as HOA president. She sat in stunned silence as the results were revealed, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. She then snatched up her handbag and hurried out. But not before turning to face the door and yelling that we would all regret this when real estate values fell in her absence. The moment she did, the room burst into relieved laughter.